Greetings. This is TheBearKingRuhr, coming out of the woods before the great hibernation to make a prediction on the next Monster Hunter title announcement. In case anyone is wondering, what in the algorithm is this? Do not worry, you and everyone else watching this are in the same boat. My brothers, these two dingle-dongles, decided they wanted to make some predictions on the next Monster Hunter title via a recorded and edited video, and seeing that I haven't done one of these in years, they thought it would be great to tag me along. Seeing that I still love the franchise to death and have some thoughts, why not barf them into a few minutes of a video with some crappy editing?
This is where I would cue an intro, but since I don't have one of those, here's the title screen of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak instead. Gorgeous.
For this video, it seems only natural to go over these like a list. This is pretty standard for Monster Hunter as a whole. The second generation introduced a variety of weapon types that required hunters to manage a slew of gimmick resources in order to utilize them to their full potential, like the hunting horn and gun lance, to name a few as examples. The third generation introduced the long-forgotten, and not missed by some, underwater combat. What if hunting monsters, but monsters swim, and you swim to them? It was the premise of the third generation, but was only available in that generation. Also, the switch axe was added. Cool. The fourth generation made changes to vertical movement and vertical combat. Jumping attacks were essential to the game's new fast and dynamic gameplay. Who knew that adding jumps would increase the high-action gameplay of hunting giants to new heights? The fifth generation, the Monster Hunter that broke into the mainstream. This game's new mechanic was the emphasis on an open map environment. Seamless transitions from one part of the map to the next, the inclusion of multiple base camps, mantles, slingers, turf wars, and the Clutch Claw all made their debut here, bringing new life into this already jammed full series of games. With these noted, for sure, a new mechanic is pretty much guaranteed. Open map exploration will stay, but it is unlikely or debatable that the wire bug or some variation of Clutch Claw / the Slinger will. My belief is that it will either include more opportunities for vertical movement, which would be inspired by Rise's wire bug feature, or it will take place deeper in the waters. That's right! My prediction for the sixth generation is a return, or revamp, of underwater combat, or a variation of water combat. We saw it being somewhat played with in World with the use of deep water, muddy terrains, but I think they'll explore it more, either utilizing something like the wedge beetle but more freely, or giving better water movement while in these deeper terrains. It would provide a high-paced gameplay feel in an environment that should and still will be primarily dominated by the creatures that lurk there. Speaking of creatures, ever since their introduction in Tri, Leviathans had struggled to maintain a spot in future titles. It was only recently in Rise that we started to see them spring up again, but they were not a full cast of sea-like beasts. And whenever we did see them, unless they were Mizusune, they didn't feel like they were adapting well. Their lack of water movesets either made them feel incomplete, or a hollow version of themselves. Their primary downfall was the lack of underwater or good water combat. They rarely took advantage of this outside of the third generation of games, because they didn't have the water to use at all. Their other negatively impacting trait was the complexity of their skeleton. The developers over at Capcom shared the dismay at the lack of Legiacrus' appearance in the recent titles, including World, proclaiming that implementing his complex skeleton into World's awkward terrain took too much time and money for them to justify its inclusion. With that said, since most of the tech and code is understood and learned from the previous generation of titles, all they would need to focus on really would be a new mechanic and getting new monsters for those mechanics. So why not bring back a slew of old monsters from the Library of Leviathans and shove them into a water-based world mechanic? World was being built from the ground up, exploring expensive territories that the team was relatively new to, but now they are veterans of the open map environment and the dynamic world setting, and have a backlog of world skeletons to use and reuse for new and returning monsters. Adding a monster type that the community has been wanting for a while would just go swimmingly. Alright, I'm about to blow your minds. What is one thing that the mainline Monster Hunter games always do with their flagship monster? They always bring a new skeleton base. Monster Hunter DOS introduced Kushala Daura, one of the Elder Dragon skeletons that would be used as a base for future Elder Dragon designs. Monster Hunter Tri gave us Lagiacris, whatever you want to say, which was the Leviathan skeleton. Already talked about, moving on. Monster Hunter 4 took a bold turn with Gormagala, a 6-limbed dragon skeleton only being used a handful of times by creatures like Gogmazios and Geismagor. Monster Hunter World brought us Nergigante, a spiky boy skeleton whose name I try to say very carefully. All of these flagships of their main vanilla titles were unique skeleton designs. It is unquestionable that the next mainline antagonist will also have a unique skeleton made from the ground up. My prediction is that this new skeleton base will be aquatic-like. Not a Leviathan, but definitely water adept. My last prediction will be more on the copium side of things. A frontier monster, either returning, like Hypnocratrus, or a new frontier debut for the mainline Monster Hunter franchise. Sunbreak made it possible for this to happen when Capcom whipped out their Espinas and brought us Espinas, opening our imaginative dams wide open towards the bundles of future opportunity. One of the final bosses will be a rock or involve rocks in some way. World and Iceborne both had a rock as a final boss, and Sunbreak had a mole who dug into and around rocks. So yeah,